Hi everyone, this is Scott. If you want to learn about the world's oldest civilizations, find out how they were rediscovered, follow the story of Mark Antony and Cleopatra's descendants over 10 generations, or take a deep dive into the Iron Age or the Hellenistic era, then check out the Ancient World podcast. Available on all podcasting platforms, or go to ancientworldpodcast.com. That's the Ancient World Podcast.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the History of World War II podcast, episode 603, One Bloody Advance After Another. Last time, the first 2 weeks of August saw the German defensive line shattered at Adrano, as planned. From there, the British, Canadian, and American troops took command of the southwestern, then west, then northern territory at the base of Mount Etna. From there, the British 78th Division would get a rest, while the Americans pressed on north of the Great Height. Not that Monty was done being offensively minded, but that can wait for now. Now it was time for the 1st U.S. Division to push on eastward, while the 45th U.S. Division along the coast kept pace. Problem is, the 45th Division was not keeping pace. For along a series of ridges just west of San Stefano, just outside the Axis defensive line, the Germans were holding out, and bombarded as they were, the American guns could not shake the Germans out from their caves there. No, something bigger was needed, say, the turrets of a U.S. naval destroyer, and one just happened to be off the northern coast of Sicily, offering support. Adding its might, the destroyer was able to shell the German positions to the point that they retreated from San Stefano. But this time, they headed more inland to Reitano, about 3 miles further south. This allowed the 2nd Battery of the 180th Regimental to continue east, though they had to fight the entire way until they reached the edges of San Stefano, the town proper. And it would take an entire day of fighting, but by the end of July 31st, San Stefano belonged to the Allies. Thus far, the invasion of Sicily price paid by the 45th Division was 275 dead, with another 573 wounded, with a further 141 missing in action. It was time for someone else to take the lead. So at San Stefano, the 45th settled down, while General Truscott's 3rd U.S. Division came forward using repaired rails and took the lead. The 3rd Division would push on along the coast, but first, due south of where the 3rd Division was taking the lead at San Stefano, the 1st Division was keeping pace. Due south of San Stefano is the town of Nicosia, along Highway 120, and that's the route the Big Red One was on. As the highway zigzagged as if it was trying to avoid a U-boat, the 1st Division went along it and fought and won at towns like Triona, Sassaro, and of course helping with Randazzo, as we saw previously. But going back to Nicosia, the 1st Division didn't so much win the town as to prepare to fight for it, which is when General Hoob ordered on July 27th his forces there to retreat. Italian General Guzzoni let Hoob know about his displeasure when the latter told the Italian that his priority was to preserve the German forces should they be needed to evacuate. Hoob continued, "The Axis forces at Primusol Bridge area seemed to be doing okay. No, it was the other forces, i.e. the 15th and 29th Panzer Grenadier Divisions with the 1st Parachute Division and whatever Italians had yet to surrender, that seemed unable to hold." Thus Hoob ordered the pullback, which Guzzoni eventually went along with. Alas, when Nicosia fell to the Americans, some 700 Italian troops decided to stay there and surrender. This weakened the already thin argument that Hoob should even explain himself to Guzzoni, but the niceties had to be observed. When Aguirre on Highway 121 fell to the Canadians south of where the 1st U.S. Division was at, the pressure was building and it seemed that the Germans had no choice but to pull back, shorten their supply lines, and shorten the length of their battle line, pick a spot, and defend it at all costs, much as they had done in Tunisia. And with Nicosia subdued, the next town for the 1st Division to take was Troina. But here, the Americans were about to find out that their intelligence branch was off on a few things, and 2, the Germans were not, as supposed, ready to simply fall back at the slightest pressure. If anything, the Germans felt keenly that Troina needed to be held, just in case the Canadians captured Brigabuto, almost due south, which of course, as we've seen, they did. And defending Troina and its surrounding area was most of the 15th Panzer Grenadier Division. To the north was the 29th Panzer Grenadier Division and the Aosta Division. To the south, there were elements of the Hermann Goering Division. To hold here meant that German guns at Troina and near it could shell the enemy for miles in every direction. As most of the 15th Panzer Grenadier was here, its commander, General Roth, was in charge. He created 2 regimental-sized units. One, Group Fulried, was placed in Troina and to its north, while the other group, Group Enns, shielded the southern routes to the city. Scattered around Troina were 4 battalions of the Aosta Division. The idea was that if this area could hold out, then it would help protect the main outer line. As to bypass the Axis-held area here was to threaten one's own flank. It didn't matter if it was the 3rd Division passing by the north or the Canadians to the south. Holding Troina here and now would stymie the Allied advance to the north or to the south. As for those about to attack Troina, the men of the 1st U.S. Division, by now, were tired, and that fatigue was leading to moments of insubordination. Ill discipline was the word being used to describe this on certain reports. The plan was now to switch out the 1st for the 9th Division, but given the lack of roads, that was easier said than done, and there wasn't even enough space in between the various heights to make the switch out. Thus, the 1st Division, though tired, was kept in place, and the attack got underway. On July 31st, a battalion of the 39th Infantry Regiment from the 9th U.S. Division, already on loan to the 1st Division, attacked and captured Monte dell'Annunziata, located about 5 miles northwest of Troina. That's a good start. Also, the 16th Infantry Regiment went to the southeast of Highway 120 and captured another hill labeled 1209. This was actually due west of Troina. Perhaps General Terry Allen of the 1st Division was hoping the Axis here would fall back, just as they had done previously in other locations. But General Allen and his GIs were about to be put on notice. A battalion of the 39th Regiment was sent to capture another hill, this one marked 1034, and it was only 1 mile due west of the city, but a unit of the 15th Panzer Grenadier nearby reacted viciously and pushed back the battalion. Turns out that Colonel Enns of one of the German battle groups was organizing his own defense of this hill when the Americans came. So as the Americans, had reached the height and were about to enjoy their local victory and set up their own defenses, the Germans charged at them. General Allen now sensed that he was dealing with more enemy determination than his G2 section told him, so he would overcompensate. The 39th Regiment would make for the town. The 26th Regiment and another formation to their left would also attack and take the hills north of the town. The road that goes into Troina does so from the northwest. So controlling that road and the northern area in general gives one access to the town. The attack got underway on August 2nd, but it didn't go anywhere. Or rather, the middle unit, the 26th, made a modest gain, but then they, like the other units to their right and left, were stalled by intense and accurate German artillery fire. The 9 artillery battalions supporting the Americans made no difference. And then it got worse. Trying again the next day, August 3rd, this time while one of the 26 Regiment's battalions got lost amongst the hills and would make no difference on this day, fortunately, another battalion stayed on course and managed to reach their objective, Mont Basilio, a height 2 miles due north of Choina. But they soon wished they hadn't. That same afternoon, August 3rd, the 129th Panzer Grenadier Regiment attacked this successful American advance. The GIs held their ground, but they would find themselves barely able to move for the next 2 days, as any exposure was shot at. At one point, the GIs were almost completely cut off from receiving supplies, which would have been their end. So a few airdrops were made, but the American-controlled territory was so small, only a percentage of the items got through. The Germans, meanwhile, never let up, which led to American casualties mounting here. Of this trapped group, when 48 hours went by, only one of the American companies had 17 men fit for duty that they could muster. Back to the main attack against Choina. After the sunset on August 2nd, Allen, in wanting to help those trapped men and end this battle, would attack along the entire front before the city. There was no way the enemy was strong enough to resist everywhere, but instead of just standing and taking the American attack along his line, General Roth arranged to have a series of smaller counterattacks launched. In the end, the Americans, thrown off their rhythm by this burst of German activity, were stalled. This clearly wasn't working, so on the 5th day of battle, General Allen had an 8-battalion artillery strong bombardment launched at the city proper, joined by 72 A-36 fighter bombers, and each plane had a 500-pound bomb to drop over the city. These attacks had to cause German and Italian casualties, but still, they held on to the town. Even more, the Germans went on their own counterattack. On August 5th, the Germans focused this attack on the 26th Infantry, north of town, specifically at one company. But that's when Private James Reese, the acting leader of the 60mm mortar squad, rushed up, set up, fired, and broke up the enemy charge. But soon the Germans were onto him and his team. Seeing this, Reese ordered the team to retreat while he stayed there with the weapon. Once his men were away, Reese would move from place to place, firing the mortar as he did, and his last bomb destroyed a German machine gun position. Now out of mortars himself, instead of retreating, he readied his rifle and kept attacking. Reducing the enemy a few more soldiers, Reese was finally killed himself, and for these actions he was awarded the Medal of Honor posthumously. For the last 5 days, the Americans had attacked the German-held area each day, and each attack was larger than the one before, with even more artillery and bombing strikes than before. To be sure, the defenders had by now suffered 1,600 casualties, but they were still holding. Nope, that wasn't the problem. On August 5th, the American attack was committed by all 3 regimental combat teams from the 9th Division, along with the 1st Division and the Gourmier, that is, soldiers native to Morocco. But for all this, Allied gains here came in yards, not miles. By the end of the day, General Hoob received the latest update of the overall situation on Sicily. The Americans were less than 1 mile from Choina. They would probably have all the heights around the town, as long as they were willing to take losses, and on August 2nd, the Canadians had taken Rigalbuto to the southeast. The next day, as we have seen, Centoripe had fallen, and now the Allies were on their way to Adrano. If Adrano fell, then the Axis troops here at Choina would probably be unlikely to escape to Messina. So, before the sun rose on August 6th, the Axis troops quietly pulled out of Choina. That morning, a patrol of the 1st U.S. Division crept closer to the town. No one shot at them, so they kept going. By mid-morning, this patrol entered the town, and there was something to see. Actually, several somethings. There was at least 150 bodies lying around, mostly Axis soldiers, but some civilians. A 500-pound unexploded bomb was in the church, having come through the roof, and the mayor's office had been turned into a triage station, with children included. With Troina taken, the U.S. division was pulled back. General Terry Allen and Deputy Commander Brigadier Roosevelt were relieved of their posts. Now in command of the 1st U.S. Division was Major General Clarence R. Hubner. Now, a change-up of units in a fight is normal. Relieving commanders of their posts, that was unusual enough to get attention. Someone was not happy with how the Big Red One was conducting themselves when not fighting. Meanwhile, further north along the coast, 3rd U.S. Division was advancing. As it was August proper now, the temperatures passed 100 degrees each day. The GIs were always on the lookout for water, which the retreating Germans knew, and thus laid booby traps around water. Another danger was the unripe citrus fruit and grapes the Americans came upon. These were consumed, and soon after, the stomach and bowels of the GIs let the young men know that was a bad idea. One last water-related story, the disinfectant tablets did nothing for the taste of the water in the men's canteens, so they would neglect this bit of prudence, and again, their stomachs and bowels would pay the price. Picking up where the 45th Division left off, the 3rd moved on, soon closing in on the town of Caronia, located about 3 miles east of San Stefano. The plan was to take the bridge just on their side of the town and Caronia itself, and a bit of the road on the far side, making sure that the enemy could not escape. The thinking ran, well, the 3rd Division is fresh, the Axis troops before them are not. Let's try to wrap this up. General Truscott had a decision to make. The coast road was wide enough here for two-way traffic, which was rare. Further, it was relatively straight, reducing the number of turns that the Germans could use for an ambush. But there were turns. So Truscott could send his 3rd Division along the road, which was covered by German guns, or he could try to outflank the Germans, which would mean swinging around more inland, traveling by foot and mule across the northern slopes of the Caronia Mountains. Making his decision, Truscott then formed up the provisional pack train of mules and a provisional mountain troop of horse, all under the command of Major Robert W. Crandall. So, while the plans for this attack were put together, both Patton and General Bradley realized they had an option that had not been open to General Allen when he had been further west. As the coastline here was more forgiving, both U.S. commanders realized they could do an amphibious landing or end run behind the German defensive line. The limit, of course, was how many men could be transported at one time. Patton's Navy, as he called Rear Admiral Lyle L. Davidson's Task Force 88, could move one reinforced infantry battalion. That's it. So now there were plans to attack by land and plans to attack by sea. The attack by land plan was finished first. So at 5 a.m. August 2nd, a battalion of the 30th Infantry Regiment went along the northern edges of the cliffs. They weren't the ones that were going to swing around to go under the town. No, they were just staying off the road, avoiding enemy artillery until they came closer to their goal, that is, the bridge just west of Caronia. Despite fears of garbled communications, the 3 battalions worked well together. A battalion each would come at Caronia from the northeast, the south, and once across the bridge from the west. But the Germans were most anxious to defend here, as it was at the top of the major defensive line. As the GIs closed in on the known minefields, the Germans opened up with long-range machine gun fire, mortars, and artillery, adding to the GIs' confusion. The 30th might be working well together, but they were not ready for what the Germans threw at them. As this was their first encounter with the Germans, the 30th lost 40 men within an hour. To a degree, they collectively became shell-shocked. Seeing this, the 2nd Battalion of the 15th Regimental Combat Team was now put in front. The 2nd got past the destroyed bridge and kept moving east through the hills, more inland. To take this route, or even a part of it, by jeep would have been a luxury. But to the south of town, amongst the hills, any land that was flat enough for a jeep also had mines waiting for a jeep. Traveling all that day, again amongst the hills south of town, the men of the 2nd Battalion had reached the base of several other heights called Monte San Fratello, about 2,200 feet high. The GIs had traveled about 8 miles east, but because of the hills, they had been protected from German artillery, and now looking at the next height, they could see that the enemy was buried into the sides, and below it was a dried-up riverbed which had mines scattered all around. And it was hoping that this advance south of the town and south of the coast road would help the Germans at Caronia fall back, as hopefully their position would soon be untenable. And now that the GIs had a better starting position, the next day, August 3rd, at 8:30 a.m., they started up a 2.5-hour artillery attack that would hopefully shake the Germans from their caves along the sides of the heights. Then the Battle of San Fratello commenced. Back at Caronia, elements of the 15th RCT tried to move along the highway 113, but again the Germans there were still toughing it out and stopped the Americans with artillery fire. Meanwhile, seeing that the coast road was still blocked, but that the way under Caronia was open, the 2 other regiments' battalions went south until they reached Hill 673, just south of the still German-held town of San Fratello. The Germans also controlled the heights north of the town all the way up to the coast road. The Americans here at the base of Hill 673 could not simply drive north through the heights. There were too many German guns and strongpoints along the way. But that wasn't their goal. They were trying to push a bit further east, cross a river, and then head north, cutting off the 29th Panzer Grenadier Division's retreat route. But even after several attacks, the Germans proved that they had been prepared for this. Getting frustrated, Truscott called for a larger attack on San Fratello proper, the town near the southern end of the heights. But even as the 15th and 30th RCTs tried that August 4th, the ground was too rugged to advance in serious numbers, and it provided, again, excellent defensive positions for the veteran Germans. The attacks came to nothing. Before the day was over, Truscott would tell these men climbing up the height to wait until night came and then finish their climb. Other delays caused the attack to not start up until August 6th, which seemed to justify the delay. The 3rd, 40th, and 3rd, 15th managed to reach the top of Hill 673. But again, showing that the Germans were ready, these men soon came under fire from a height even further south. A company was pinned down by this German fire, so they stayed hidden until darkness. Then they moved out, joined by others, and just after midnight, now August 7th, Hill 673 was taken. The Germans, determined to hold, counterattacked, but only after their own 45-minute artillery barrage. But the ground that so had helped the Germans now helped the GIs. They withstood wave after wave of German counterattacks, and seeing that they had failed and they were now weaker for their losses, the Germans here pulled back, while the GIs climbed down Hill 673, went north, and entered San Fratello. Meanwhile, another unit moved to the heights of Mont San Fratello, again north of the town, and started clearing it out, capturing 500 prisoners. While this intense fighting had been going on, the 7th Infantry had been able to pass through Caronia further west, now subdued because of a German retreat, travel along the highway, and pretty much bypass the fighting at San Fratello, and reached the next town of Acque Dolci at 7:35 a.m., August 8th. Pushing on, the 7th then reached the next town, Sant'Agata, 2 more miles down the road, and then, to everyone's great joy and relief, this 7th Infantry made contact with the amphibious landing of Lieutenant Colonel Lyle Bernard's 230th. Between this amphibious landing, the first of many to come, and the GIs pushing in along the coast road, the Germans decided to retreat further east. There was just one problem with that. Some of the bridges they needed to cross were already mined. These would have to be cleared first, which took time the Allied Navy used along the northern coast to harass the retreating panzers and trucks. And one such naval shell hit a mine under a bridge. Pure luck, but there you have it. The bridge went up in the air, well, parts of it, now unusable. Thus, the Germans would have to drive around either side of the land bridge before they could move on. Oh, wait. In their thoroughness, they had mined the riverbed as well. As the Germans removed their own mines, Allied shells from artillery and ships rained down on them. Greetings, everyone, from Central Virginia. So we can see that even though it's not perfect, the Americans along the coast are making progress. The 1st Division further in above the Italians, having their own discipline issues, are still able to move. They're going to be replaced. But again, the Americans are moving on, and it's literally an Allied tidal wave that is just going from west to east, pushing everything before it. And of course, the Germans are backing up, but what they're trying to do is gain time so they can move these men back to Italy proper and keep the fight going. That's what you do. You delay as much as you can because time gives you options. So we'll see what happens next. Anyways, so I would like to thank my latest member, Eric Schuster from New York. Thank you very much, Eric. That's pretty much all I have for this time. Anyways, so Eric, that makes you my new best friend. Thank you. And so I'll see you later on this week. I've got a couple of interviews coming up, and I've got I use this word, gentleman from the Warrior Next Door podcast coming back, I think next month. So we'll do another show because it's always fun having those guys on there. Well, one of them. Anyways, so I'll see you guys later on this week. Take care, everyone.